Good evening. It's been a while. I've been busy with new packages that I've been developing. I talked a little bit about it, about rigs. This package that allows you to very easily generate Nix environments for your R projects. And now I've been working on RigSpress, which is another package that leverages Nix, but this time it focuses more on its build automation capabilities. But I still wanted to make this video tonight because I've been using for the past couple of days, I've been using LLMs for development. And I wasn't aware of how powerful it was when you could use your LLM directly inside of your code editor. So I've heard of Cursor. So you probably heard of Cursor as well. Yeah, this is the page. So this is an editor, right? That is built. So it's kind of a fork of VS Code, but it basically comes with an integrated LLM, or rather, it queries an LLM through an API. But what makes this very interesting is that when you use Cursor, the editor and the LLM are aware of your code base. So they know your code base, so you can tell the LLM, look at this file, add some unit tests to this, review the documentation of this other file, and so on. And this is extremely powerful. And I thought I could very easily do the same thing on Emacs. And it turns out it's not that simple, because if you buy a subscription to an LLM, you get an API access, right? It's a pay-as-you-go type of offering. That LLM that you will query has no clue about your code. So I thought very naively that if I bought a subscription and if I started the LLM from my terminal, that it would somehow, and now, in hindsight, it's very dumb, but I thought it would somehow be aware of my code. That's not how it works. I also, I thought that was going to be the same with this R package, Elmer. I thought Elmer would work the same way, so that you could basically have something like Cursor, but with RStudio or with Positron, and it's not. It doesn't work like that, actually. I tried it, and at least from my testing, maybe I'm mistaken, but from my testing, if you use, for example, Chat Claude or Chat Gemini or Llama or whatever, those LLMs are not aware of your code. So what you can do is you can select some code, and then you copy essentially that code portion to the message, that to the prompt, basically. And so then you can select some code, some maybe a whole function, and then you say, hey, Claude, Gemini, whatever, add some unit tests or add some documentation, whatever. But you still have to select, right? You have to select that code, and it has to be part of your prompt. Okay. So I tested Elmer, seems to be working that way. It's still very useful, and don't get me wrong, it's still very useful to work that way, but I really wanted something that was going to be aware of my code base, which is the case with Cursor. But I did not want to use Cursor because, as you know, I use Emacs. I've been using Emacs for more than 10 years. Well, when I say I use Emacs, it's not entirely true. I do use Emacs, but I use Spacemacs. So it's Emacs, but with Vim key bindings. So I use the Vim input mode, and Emacs is in a sense just there because the plugins for Emacs are fantastic. And so that's why I use Emacs kind of as a base, right? As my base editor that I then, configure, and it's basically Spacemacs. So I wanted to have something similar to that for my R development. And it turns out I found this program called aider. So in French, aider means help. It's the verb to help. Aider, j'aide, tu aides, il aide, I help, you help, he helps. Aider. So I don't know how you would pronounce that in English. A-I-D, E-I-D-R, I don't know. But aider is very useful because it's a tool that you launch in your terminal. And whenever you are talking to your LLM, so you can use whatever LLM you subscribed to, again, Gemini, OpenAI, Llama, whatever. When you start using AD, and you say, look, and you reference a file. You say, look at this file and add unit tests to the functions that you find in this file. AD will ask you, should I add this file to the context, right? Should I add it to the prompt? And you can say yes. So you add the file, and then your LLM knows about the file. And you can do that very seamlessly with many files, and there are many other functionalities. So AD asks you if it should create a new file, if it should run the tests for you. For example, if you ask it to add a new test, it'll ask you if it should run DevTools, for example, DevTools test. So that's very useful. And you have a bunch of other very fancy things like that I think are very powerful. And your LLM then is aware of your code base. And this is extremely powerful. So I wanted to try AD. Now, the issue, sorry about that, but the issue with AD is that, it's the terminal tool. So I wanted something integrated to Emacs. And of course, it turns out there is aidermacs, which is this kind of, plugin for Emacs that makes using AD seamless, right? So you start aidermacs, it starts in a buffer, and you can just start working. So I'm going to do a very little demo. Oh yeah, and by the way, of course, so this is my Emacs, so I opened a vignette. Of course, what you should do as well is you should configure Emacs to know about AD. So you have some options if you read the documentation of Emacs. Of aidermacs, this is all described there. By the way, I lost my hands. Yeah, there it is. But also what's important is you need to configure the API key. And so what I did is I put the API keys in my bash RC. And so if I start AD in the terminal, it's aware of those, but I didn't want to copy them again in my Spacemacs configuration file. So I wrote, or rather I asked an LLM, I don't remember which one now, but I asked an LLM to write this Emacs function, or rather this elisp function, to read my bash RC and to extract the Anthropic API key and the Gemini API key. And it works. And I have never, learned to program elisp in my life, and this works. Maybe it's not the most elegant implementation. Maybe if you know elisp and you're watching this, you are cringing right now. Sorry, but it works. And so I don't need to, copy the keys in different files. Why Anthropic? Why Gemini? So Gemini is free and it's extremely powerful. I'm actually very impressed by Gemini, the 2.7 experimental pro, whatever it's called. It's extremely powerful. It has a very big, very large context window, so it's pretty good for programming. It's free, which is very surprising. And honestly, if Google keeps it free forever, they can siphon all the data they want from my phone. I don't care. Just use all my dick pics if you want. I want Gemini in exchange. I'm okay with that. And why Anthropic? Because I read this blog post that I can link in the description. I'll try not to forget. That benchmarked several LLMs, and Anthropic seemed to be, if I remember, it was Anthropic. I hope it was that, because then I paid for nothing. But Anthropic was, if I remember, one of the best ones, and actually it works quite well. It's quite good as well, I must admit, for our programming. So little demo. So I have this vignette that I wrote, and I would like, to review it. I would like maybe to, if an LLM can maybe make some suggestions, etc. It could be quite useful. Something else, you need, of course, to install AD. The way I installed AD is I just add it to my default.nix file. So I have these default.nix files that define development environments, and I just added ADChat, which is the name of the package in Nix, to the system packages variable, and yeah, I just drop into my shell, and it's there. So that's pretty useful. You see, I also have some, I have Python, I have R, and so on. So this is the shell that is used to for me to develop RxPress. I'll talk more about RxPress in another video. It's almost done. I think it's going to be a very interesting package if you are into build automation. If you like targets, the targets package, I think you'll find RxPress interesting. Anyway, let's go to this vignette. So this is the vignette that explains how to run these pipelines on continuous integration. And let me start AD. So aidermacs run. So it's going to start the, so it uses Claude by default. So let's go with Claude. So you see the current working directory, it's the vignettes folder, and the Git working directory, it's the working directory of my package, right? So now let me just say, look at the, how is it called? DCI vignette, dci.rmd file, and review the grammar and make some suggestions to make the text flow better. Something like that. You can write whatever. Of course, you've probably used LLMs already, maybe in your web browser. But the issue with the web browser, of course, is that you have to copy and paste, and it's not great, even though it's free. But so I highly recommend you take a look at using the LLM directly in your editor. By the way, so Gemini is free. I've bought €5 of Claude credit, and I almost am done with them in 3 days. So I bought that on the 27th. We're the 29th now, and I'm almost done with the credits. So yeah. So you see, it's asking me if I should add the file to the chat. So I'll say yes. So now it starts looking at the file and it will make the suggestions. Now, what is very important when you edit code with an LLM is you absolutely need to have your code committed on GitHub or whatever. You need versioning. If you don't have that, you're screwed. And I'll show you why. Let me open a terminal. Maybe let me just change, because for the video I prefer, I prefer dark mode, but for the video, maybe it's better if I can, yeah, how do I zoom in the terminal? Zoom in, okay, plus, yeah. So let me just go here. So you see, there's a little star. This means that a file was edited, and it's probably, so if I do git status, yeah, you see this is the vignette, it was edited. So Claude, in this case, will edit the command, and it will even suggest, here, as you see, it suggested to render the vignette. And I will say no, because I don't need that. But what I need to do now is review its changes, right? And I need to take a look, so I can do git diff, and now I can look at the diff. By the way, if you know a better way to review these kind of things in straight from Emacs, please let me know. Anyway, you see it made some changes. So the green is what Claude added, and the red is what Claude removed. So you see, for now, it's not very I mean, it's not very big changes. I will not do the review now, but that's why I say it's very important that you put that that you have your code into versioning, right? That you version your code, because if you are not interested into these changes, I can just say, git stash, and I'm back to where it was, right? And then I get do, if I regret doing git stash, I could do git stash pop, and now, I can again, my changes are back, right? So let's go with git stash, because I don't want, it was just to show you. By the way, because Claude is not free, you see this little maneuver cost me $4 for the dollar cents for cents, right? So that's so as you work, you'll see how much the session cost, and usually when I work for an hour or two, it costs me around €1.5. So I don't think it's super expensive, but if you really use it every day very heavily, it can start to become expensive. So this is where Gemini is quite useful. So let's do aidermacs change model, and let's go with Gemini. So you see I have access to all of this. So it's the Pro experimental 0325. And so it switches, and now it's free. So now you can just work with it. Maybe let's ask it. Maybe let's ask it to do the same thing, and let's see what Gemini suggests. So for this type of thing, LLMs are amazing, but I will show you something else that's really impressed me, which is writing unit tests. Especially the unit tests for this package, it was really amazing, because this is a package that has many functions with side effects. So those are functions that will write to the working directory, that will read files that were generated, that will move files, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so now actually you see it's asking me to add this file into the chat, and this is probably because it's referenced in, or it's mentioned in the vignette. And so, Claude, or rather Emacs here, Ed is asking me, should you add this file? And you shouldn't necessarily, and let me say no, you shouldn't necessarily add all the files in the context, because LLMs can get confused by that. If you just add all your code base at once, for example, then it starts looking at stuff that is irrelevant for the task at hand sometimes, so that's not great. So let's just take a look. Git diff, yeah. So you see here, Gemini changed the first sentence much more than Claude. So Claude seemed to be a little bit more conservative. Gemini seemed to be, Gemini really changed quite a lot. So again, this is why using Git is super important. So here again, let me just git stash this. So now I'm going to show you, let me just close this buffer for now. I'm going to show you the tests, because this is really I think where it was quite important. So you see, for example, this file here, you see all these very long lines. This is all written by the LLM, basically. And the way it worked is that I said, I want to test this function. Okay, I want to test this. So I told the LLM, look at this script. This is where the function is defined. Look at this script. Okay, and write me a test for this function. And it just generated that. And then I did the same for all the other functions. And you see there's many of them. And it basically almost worked on first try. So what I did, so there were some things I did have to change. So for example, the LLM had a habit of actually, even this I would need to change, for example, of just testing a subset of the fields. So actually, I thought I changed it everywhere. Seems like I didn't. So this is something that I would then say, don't test subfields, test the whole thing, and then it will do. Or something else it will do, it will test these fields one by one. So expect equal, right? And it will say name is equal this thing. And then it will do the same, it would do the same for type. And then it will do the same for CSV file, and so on and so forth. And I would then just say, don't test every field one by one, test everything at once, and then, would work. One thing where it does get confused a lot is for functions like this one. So plot DAG, or rather here, and let me show you the code, plot, and specifically something like this one. Yeah, let me just put the center mode here. This one, this is a function that generates a ggplot. So to test this thing, you need a snapshot test. And snapshot tests, they get very confused because they start to mock a lot of functions that you don't even need to mock them. And yeah, so Claude saved the ggplot as an RDS object, which is not wrong, but might as well just save it as a PNG, right? And then you just snapshot that. But then I just also erased the test completely, because this test, the generation of these plots is not deterministic. So it's always a little bit different. Okay, there's kind of a random component to it. So the snapshot would change every time you run the tests, and that's obviously not something you want. So, and this is not something that the LLM, that Claude, was able to tell me, right? A professional developer that is familiar with ggdag, right? Because this is using ggdag, would have told me, yeah, don't do that, because this snapshot test does not make sense, because it's going to change every time. But of course, the LLM just abides and just does it, and sometimes it does crap. Yeah, that's true. However, I can say with confidence that using Emacs and Gemini and Claude made me write these tests much faster than if I hadn't used them. So I highly recommend you check it out. Try with Gemini. It's free. You don't even need to provide a credit card number, whatever. Just literally log in to the AI console of Google. Just log in there, get an API key, connect it to IDE, and then if you're using Emacs, download aidermacs. But if you're using another editor, there's very likely another plugin that uses IDE for that editor. Maybe even for VS Codes. Maybe it would be compatible with positron. I don't know. So I highly recommend you check it out. You could also probably run AD from the terminal if you're using RStudio from the actual terminal, right? You could probably use it from there as well, right? It's just that you wouldn't have this very tight integration between your editor and AD, but you can just switch to the terminal and type whatever you want, and that would work well as well. So in any case, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for a video on my upcoming package called RixPlus.